Hello and good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to our 3 p.m. Eastern Time session. Project Echo Fundamentals, Facets, and Features session sponsored by DKB Med. Big thank you to them for sponsoring. And our moderator today will be Julie White from Boston University. Before I turn things over to Julie, though, of course, let me go through and do my traditional announcements. Big thank you, of course, to all of our sponsors. Our gold sponsors today are Med Learning Group, Medscape, Projects and Knowledge. Our silver sponsors, Academic CME, Daiichi Sankyo, DKB Med, Global Learning Collaborative, Helio CME, HMP Education, MedLive, Talem Health. And our bronze sponsors, Answers in CME, Bonum Continuing Education, Catalyst Medical Education, CMEology, Excalibur Medical Education, Global Education Group, Infograph Ed, Integritas Communications, Iridium Continuing Education, MedIQ, PACE, Paradigm Medical Communications, Peerview Institute for Medical Education, and Vindico Medical Education. A couple different ways that you can ask questions. Our standard ways, you can use the CME Palooza text line to send in a question, 267-6660-CME. You can also use the YouTube chat feature, ask questions that way. Either one is fine. I'll be monitoring both of those. We will be using Poll Everywhere for a couple questions during the session, so go ahead and get that ready to go. You can either use the Poll Everywhere app, CME Palooza 005, or you can plug in the URL www.polev.com/CME Palooza 005. And then lastly, any opinions, discussions, and or conclusions expressed are those of our panelists and do not represent an endorsement by or a position of their employer, its parent company, or affiliates. So with that, I'm going to turn things over to Julie.
Great. Thanks, Derek, so much. It's super to be with all of you today, and I hope you've had a great day watching CME Palooza. I know the couple of sessions I was able to watch were just terrific. And thanks to Derek and Scott for all they do to make this possible. So I'm the Director of Continuing Education at Boston University Chobanian-Avedisian School of Medicine. I've been in CME for almost 30 years, which seems unbelievable. Loved every minute of it. And it's a pleasure for me to be here today with my colleagues, Linda and Natalie. Linda, do you want to start out and introduce yourself?
Hi, everyone. I'm Linda Baer, and I am the Grants and Diabetes Education Manager and ECHO expert for Boston University, as well as the Chief Operating Officer for ECHO Diabetes Action Network. I've been working in CE for about 26 years and with the ECHO model since 2018. And I've used it in a number of ways, including the creation of a mini fellowship in developmental behavioral pediatrics, collaboratives of ECHO providers, diabetes-focused echoes on both a regional and national level, implementation of QI projects, and the incorporation of learners from across different fields, including medicine, law enforcement, schools, and social services.
Thanks, Linda. Natalie.
Hi, I'm Natalie Sanfratello. I am Senior Program Manager for Quality Improvement Educational Programs and Contracts at BU. I have been in CE for 10 years. I took the ECHO training about 3 years ago and have worked on an ECHO project focusing on quality improvement, serving on the expert hub team.
Thanks, Natalie. And as far as Boston University is concerned, we've been a Project ECHO collaborative partner since 2019. We have conducted 7 programs in a variety of different areas. We're currently doing our 8th, about to launch that a little later this year on the topic of multiple myeloma. And I will say that ECHO is something that it just is a phenomenal program. So hopefully this will be helpful for you, this program, and everyone will learn something. Derek, ready for the next slide? So our objectives today are to explain the ECHO model in accredited CE, identify evidence supporting its effectiveness, to strategize potential adaptations to the model to further its impact in continuing ed, and to talk about best practices to ensure the creation of an effective interprofessional community of practice that can transform and sustain strong health systems where every person has fast access to the highest quality healthcare. Next slide. Okay, so we want to get an idea of who's in the audience, how familiar you are with Project ECHO. Okay. So interesting. We're all over the map here. Wow. Okay. Well, this is great. We've got some experts, some people who know a little bit about it, some who have heard the name, and then some not at all. So we will try to meet all your educational needs, which are pretty widely dispersed, but this is great. And I hope that you will chat in comments and thoughts as well as questions, those of you that have a lot of experience. Okay, I think we can go to the next slide. So I'm going to turn this over to Natalie.
Thanks, Julie. So I'm starting with learning objective number 1 and introducing a bit about Project ECHO. First, its mission is to democratize implementation of best practices for healthcare and education to all people all over the world. Next slide. Project ECHO, or Extension for Community Healthcare Outcomes, was founded in 2003 by Dr. Sanjeev Arora. The concept behind Project ECHO is to democratize or demonopolize medical knowledge held by specialists and share it with primary care providers to deliver best practice care to people who are under-resourced. Dr. Sanjeev Arora at the University of New Mexico originally created Project ECHO in response to the needs of mostly rural populations in New Mexico who were waiting months and traveling great distances to receive care for hepatitis C. The model was designed to address areas where there is system failure and poor outcomes, where there aren't enough specialists, where there are disparities in care, and where primary care professionals may lack the confidence to provide needed complex care. Now the model has expanded to other use cases, and participants can also be specialists within the community. Next slide. The ECHO model works through its all teach, all learn format. It's a hub and spoke model where the hub is a multidisciplinary and interprofessional team of specialists from centers of excellence who provide regular real-time collaborative sessions with clinician learners, either primary care or specialists who work in the community. And I'll add that hub team members and participants may also be non-clinicians, such as lawyers, operations managers, even librarians sometimes serve on the hub teams. And ECHO sessions are highly interactive. They involve case-based learning where participants present challenging cases to be discussed by the full community of practice. There's peer-to-peer learning and collaborative problem solving. Knowledge and best practices are shared multi-directionally between the hub and learners, among the learners, and importantly as well, between the learners and the hub. And so the idea here is, again, to move knowledge and best practices rather than patients needing to move to get care. Next slide. The ECHO model is longitudinal with regularly occurring ECHO sessions over a period of time. ECHO sessions are these regularly scheduled video conferencing sessions, which include subject matter experts and learners who use the model to create a community of practice, to deliver brief lectures, case-based learning, and mentoring to create learning loops, which I'll cover in a couple of slides. ECHO sessions are a core feature of the ECHO model, and they build deep implementation expertise over time. In this picture on the right, you'll see the hub team in the foreground and the learners in the Hollywood squares on the left and right TV screens. The concept is to provide a very interactive learning experience with a focus on management of patients, collaboration among all participants to build a community practice, and peer-to-peer learning. ECHO has utilized the Zoom platform and technology-enabled format since the beginning. And now many of ECHOs are even fully on Zoom without the hub necessarily being separately in person. Next slide. Importantly, the ECHO model is not telemedicine, as its goal is to amplify the provision of care rather than provide care one-on-one to a remote patient. On the left-hand side of the slide, in the bottom of the image, you can see a traditional telemedicine you can see traditional telemedicine, where patients are connected directly to one specialist in a one-on-one encounter. Alternatively, above that, in the ECHO model, an expert hub team works with learners at participating sites to build their capacity to treat patients with complex care needs, ultimately amplifying the impact among patients. So this model can affect many more patients than a one-on-one traditional telemedicine approach can do. The sessions are designed around case-based learning and mentorship. They help local clinicians gain the expertise required to provide needed services within their communities. And the ECHO Institute tracks each session via an iECHO platform, which Linda will cover in more depth in later slides, to be able to monitor outcomes in addition to the outcomes that a hub team will develop for its own education, so things that we would already collect. And learners from participating sites gain skills and confidence. Specialists learn new approaches for applying their knowledge across diverse cultural and geographical contexts and understand the barriers that clinicians in their communities face. And this is really part of that all teach, all learn, where the learning goes in both directions. Next slide. And here's another great image of this force multiplication factor of the ECHO model, or power within the ECHO model. So the hub team is all the way on the left in the red, and the participating sites are in purple. And as you can see, through building capacity in the community clinicians, the ECHO model helps to provide better care for patients in their local setting, which is important, rather than requiring them to travel long distances or meet via telemedicine with a specialist provider who's potentially removed from them geographically. Next slide. And here's a display of that ECHO model continuous learning loop that I mentioned before. So where many traditional educational models will stop at knowledge sharing, ECHOs continue around this loop due to their interactive and longitudinal nature. So first, ECHOs have knowledge sharing through didactic and case presentations and discussion. Participants are then asked to reflect on this knowledge sharing through clarifying questions and discussion. They then implement recommendations that come out of these discussions within their own practice based on what they've learned, and they share back progress in subsequent sessions, ultimately providing ongoing outcomes for formative assessment and leading to adaptation and further knowledge sharing. Next slide. So ECHOs are taking place all over the world. Each dot represents a country where ECHOs are occurring, and the darkness represents how many programs are in each country. So ECHOs are happening in 212 countries and areas over the world, with over 1,500 ECHO hubs, 7,800 programs, and more than 7.1 million learners. So the reach is vast. Next slide. And here we're diving a little deeper into United States, showing 2023 ECHO attendance by county. The darker teal are urban counties with ECHO participants. The lighter teal are rural counties with participants, and the gray is where we need to target some more learners. As you can see, ECHOs are a popular and well-received format for continuing education in the health professions. So now I'm going to turn it over to our resident expert, Linda, to continue the conversation.
Thanks, Natalie, for kicking us off with all that great information. So the key to creating a successful ECHO is to ensure that it is in fact all teach, all learn experience, where the hub team and the learners come together and they form that community of practice that we're looking for. And the model supports the development of that community through interactive components, such as encouraging the use of chat and contributing to the conversation, learner case presentations, and through those, the use of both guided practice and ongoing mentorship, and the peer-to-peer learning and collaborative problem solving that takes place during during those case discussions. Next slide, please. As the model has been in use for over 20 years, the literature surrounding it is quite robust. As of a year ago, there were about 650 publications addressing ECHO, and as of today, there are over 700. And the ECHO Institute has so ever kindly reviewed these and found that they span the full spectrum of Moore and colleagues framework. So there really is quite a lot of depth to the effectiveness of this model. I'm going to tell you on the next slide, we're going to start to give you some examples next slide, we're ready, of what's in the literature. So this is one example of echo's impact on patients from the University of New Mexico's EndoEcho program. Their research demonstrates that the patients with diabetes seen by primary care clinicians who participate in UNM's EndoEcho, which is represented on the graph by the blue bars, were more likely to transition from A1Cs over 9% to A1Cs under 8% compared to the patients with diabetes treated in UNM's endocrinology clinic. And those folks are represented by the orange bars. Next slide, please. So the patients who are cared for by the primary care professionals who participate in this echo live in rural communities of New Mexico. And as Natalie mentioned, the majority of New Mexico is rural community. So there's a lot of participation there. And the evidence from this research was published in July of last year to look at kind of the impact on rural communities. So if we go to the next slide. This research shows that A1Cs in ECHO participants dropped 1.2%, which was significantly better than the specialist cohort, while also avoiding weight gain. So specialty clinic patients did have a decrease in A1C, but they saw an increase in weight, which is more typical with aggressive insulin therapy. So we can see that the patients getting care directly from their primary care teams in their communities is making a bigger impact on patients. All right. Next slide, please. So if you've heard all this and you're thinking, okay, I'm really ready to start my echo journey, for those of you who haven't already, there are a few steps that you'll need to take. You'll need to become an echo partner. And to do that, you need to reach out to the Echo Institute. And I've got the URL shown in the slide. You'll sign partnership agreements and undergo an extensive launch training. It's very effective. You'll also need to provide continued reporting and keep in communication with the Echo Institute regarding the echoes that you're offering. Natalie addressed this when she mentioned the tracking that the Echo Institute does through their learning management system, which they call iEcho. Once you're ready to offer an echo, the Institute has other services that it provides, including hosting of the echoes, or the Zoom platform, basically, and evaluation and communication services through iEcho. Upon request, they can also provide feedback and mentoring on your echo sessions to help you improve your offerings and ensure fidelity to the echo model. They also offer office hours for individualized help. There are also many opportunities to join what they call the Meta Echo community, where you can learn from your peers through collaboratives, monthly update meetings, annual reports, and the Institute's document storage system on Box, which they call Pearl. And finally, they also have additional trainings both in iEcho management and program coordination. Next slide. All right, so what does an echo actually look like? They typically are 1 to 2 hours in length. Plus, they have a 15-minute prep and right before and a 15-minute debrief immediately after. Echoes more typically are an hour rather than the 2 hours, but you do see them in different areas with different topics at different lengths. You might meet weekly, you might meet twice monthly, you might meet monthly. It really all depends on the content that you're trying to teach, how complex it is, and that will help you determine what you need. The sessions all include that 50-minute prep, and what you're doing there is really potentially talking about the case in advance to ensure that everybody's on board and all your hub team members know what they want to talk about. It may be getting in a little bit more planning for future sessions. It could be anything that's immediate because this is your chance to talk with your faculty. You then have your program, and the program is shown on the right slide, right? So after we do our prep, we do introductions and announcements, and that's from both the hub team and the learners. Typically, people start with the didactic presentation and the Q&A, and then they move to the case presentation. But you can do it the other way around if that makes more sense. After the case is presented, you have clarifying questions and case discussion, where you're always asking the learners first for their feedback before your hub team says anything, except for facilitating the conversation. And then you get case recommendations in the same way. You're asking your learners first for their recommendations based on their experience and expertise in their communities, and then you get it from the hub team. And then you're going to end with a summary of the case and its recommendations. Anything else that you want to wrap up the session with, because again, you're having multiple sessions, so you may be talking about the next session, you may be talking about how to get your CE credit, you could be talking about any number of things. That then goes into the debrief.
Linda, just want to, before you go to the next slide, are you about to, did you finish this one?
Almost there, not quite yet.
Okay.
I just wanted to say that there are really two models for this. There is a regional model, which is the origins of ECHO, and people have created national models. Now I'm ready.
Okay, so I just want to ask before you go into that, because this is good timing. Someone's asking the question about how difficult it is to start offering ECHO and how long does it take to prep?
Okay, so typically, if you're doing a regional ECHO, and we're going to talk a little bit about what that means in the next slide, you usually need at least 6 months because you're recruiting actual clinical practices. And to get full practices on board rather than individual clinicians, that takes time. You're also looking for the right faculty for your hub team. That's also typically a little more complex than, what you might do for a regular CE program. So there is quite a bit of prep. You have a lot of moving pieces, and you really do need a dedicated course director who feels passionate about this and is ready to put in the effort for it. The national echoes work a little differently. You can do them a little faster. They don't tend to be as elongated as the regional echoes. So there's a little less planning that goes in, and the recruitment is easier because you're just going after individual clinicians.
Great.
Did I answer everything? Okay.
So we have another question, but we'll wait till we get through these. So go ahead.
Okay. All right. Next slide, please. Okay. So what's the regional model? So the concept of the regional model is you're looking for clinical practices that have similarities. And so they can really relate to one another and they face the same barriers. So they may be dealing with the same Medicaid insurers and the same formularies and the same types of health issues that you see. For instance, when we did it in Northern California and throughout California, we had a lot of clinicians who had a lot of patients with substance use disorders on top of their diabetes. And so that was a common thread that would run through many of our cases. And our clinicians were dealing with both the diabetes and the substance use disorders. And so having that expertise, which our endocrinologists did not have, was really key, and people felt really comfortable talking about it. So that helps to allow for the development of a really strong community of practice. People get to know one another. They call each other outside the sessions. It also allows, because you're recruiting a practice, to have several clinicians from that practice attend. They may not attend every one. You may get one at a time, but you might get, a nurse practitioner, and then you might get a PA, and then you might get a physician, you might get a medical assistant, who are all part of that team. And that helps to spread the education throughout the the practice. These are easier to manage because you're only navigating one or maybe two time zones. And the way you accomplish it is through agreements or memoranda of understanding to help protect the clinician's time to participate because it's more elongated, and to really get buy-in for getting your cases, which is such an integral part. The national model is where, like I said, you're recruiting individual clinicians rather than practices, so that makes it easier. If it's too large, which we all hope for, you may need to switch to a webinar format. However, if you do that, then you really need to ensure active management of it and the chat and the Q&A to make sure people are communicating and adding. Otherwise, it's just a typical webinar where you're showing slides and your faculty are talking, and that does not work in Echo. It's harder to achieve your community of practice because there's not that direct interaction. So it's hard, but that doesn't mean it doesn't happen. We were just doing with PeerView an echo on EOE, and we had pretty terrific participation. It's small with gastroenterologists, but we had 7 folks who attended all 4 of our sessions. We had, I think, another 8 folks who participated in 3 of the 4 sessions, and I think we had 17 people who participated in 2 out of the 4. So people do see each other, get to know each other a little bit. But as through those numbers, you can see we didn't get everybody to participate in all of them. So you have to kind of push to get that ongoing participation. And it means you've got to be creative about adding in whatever elements you can think of to support active participation. And people can be really creative. So that's up to your imagination and your educational design skills. All right, next slide, please. So I want to talk a little bit about kind of how you can further the impact of the model through adaptations and innovations. So on this slide, these are some of the adaptations that I have worked with in the ECHOs I have had the privilege of working on. And that includes, additional conferences and workshops so people can actually get together first and get to know one another before they get online or even during the process. Device training so they have some hands-on experience. Preceptorships that can be in addition where the clinicians come into the clinics and actually are working to help with the patients, and asynchronous learning homework type of things. You can also integrate people with lived experience into your hub team so they have equal status with your clinicians. Or we did one great one in California where we had health coaches who were part of the echo who would see the patients of the echo participants. That was spectacular. You can also incorporate quality improvement projects and discuss the progress as the case. You can do curbside consultations in between the echo sessions. And you can do different kinds of education like role play during the sessions as well. I would highly encourage the provision of resource sheets or whatever you'd like to call them that include links to guidelines, patient education videos. And the University of Toronto even integrates a brief mindfulness practice into the start of their echo sessions, which was lovely and really excellent during the pandemic. So you can see there are a whole variety of things that you can do. All right, next slide. All right, so I'm going to share with you one example of an adaptation is an echo program that we conducted at BU along with CCO as a collaborator that was funded by an educational grant from Lilly. Its focus was on migraine prevention, and it incorporated both clinical and quality improvement training. The IHI model for improvement was used to have community neurology practices conduct QI projects to improve migraine prevention in their offices. And mentoring was provided in both clinical care as well as practical QI processes. We offered a 1-hour echo session monthly for 1 year, where the clinicians presented both really challenging clinical cases as well as their QI efforts. Some of the sessions focused on discussing barriers in their projects or assignments that had been undertaken. And each session included introductions of the hub team and the learners, announcements, a brief 10 to 15-minute didactic presentation followed by Q&A, and then the case presentation by one or more of the learners. For faculty, we had an academic neurologist, a community neurologist, a pharmacist, an NP, and a QI expert. And we provided access to real-time support during the sessions, of course, but also outside of the echoes. Natalie, as our QI expert, was available pretty much anytime folks needed to meet to talk about their QI projects when they were just, I'm not sure quite what to do next, or I'm banging my head, or how do I get buy-in, or whatever the question might be. And we also had a participant-only website, which offered recordings of the sessions, the case recommendation summaries, and QI tools. And the beautiful part about this is the fun part where we get to brag a little. Out of the 8 practices which completed their QI projects, 7 showed improvement in the number of headache days experienced by the patients with migraine. And one of the great things we heard from the participants was that their participation in the echo helped to convince their colleagues to try out the QI intervention. So it was a cycle of, this is exciting to participate, and we're doing something special here. All right, next slide. All right, so if you haven't experienced an echo before, you can. The Echo Institute offers access to a number of their series, which is, the link is on this page here, the iecho.org/become a partner. And I will also say that there are many echo enthusiasts out there, and they're very open to sharing their knowledge. And if you talk to them, they may often invite you to join their echoes at programs across the country. And you can, if you sign up to be a learner in an echo, through iecho.org, you can see those echoes that are open to everybody, and you can just go there and sign up. So with that, I will now turn things back over to Julie.
Thank you, Linda, very much. I just want to, no pun intended, echo something that Linda just said. The culture of echo people is all about collaboration. Everyone is so welcoming. Linda was our go-to mentor when we first started. MedIQ has done some great work with Echo. When I called them for help about recruiting sites, they were very forthcoming with advice. So it's sort of all teach, all learn. That carries through as well to all of us, right? All of us that are actually executing the programs. So I have a few questions, but I want to, this is very funny. One of the questions that came up while you were speaking, Linda, is actually the next polling question. So why don't we, the question is, are there clinical areas or groups of HCPs that Echo is better suited for? So let's run the polling question and then we'll talk about that. So what types of topics work best with Echo? So give it your best shot, and you can choose more than one as I understand it. Very interesting, all over the map. It's not supposed to be a trick question, but it does dovetail nicely into the question posed in the chat. Okay, so let me say a few words, and then Linda and Natalie, please feel free to pipe in here. So it actually doesn't work really well with highly specialized conditions where you have to get into complex theoretical topics and sort of dive deep into basic science and all that. That's really not what it's about. So just reminding you of what Linda said about the anatomy of an echo, there is some information sharing at the beginning, but the best part of the echo is the case discussion when people are actually bringing cases that they're challenged with to the group and then discussing it. That's like 30 minutes. If you have an hour-long session, that's half the time. So it works really well for D, E, F, and G, common medical conditions requiring complex care. And I like to give type 2 diabetes as the primary. It's a perfect example. It's complicated. It's very challenging for primary care providers. There's a huge shortage of endocrinologists. And so if there were a way globally to empower primary care to feel more confident about treating people with type 2 diabetes, this is it. This is like the ideal scenario where they're meeting on a regular basis. They're seeing patients in between. They have specific patients that they're not sure what to do with, and they can bring them forward to the group. So to answer that question, it's really like chronic disease is probably, and not that we haven't done other echoes, we have, and actually we did one on SBS, which I heard an earlier session, a patient talking about her own story with that. But it's really ideally designed for building skills over time, a broad dissemination of knowledge from the experts to the primary care setting, or could be in our case of migraine, it was the migraine headache specialist neurologist, sharing the knowledge with the community-based neurologists. Linda or Natalie, do you want to add anything to that?
I think you covered it, Julie. I think that's exactly it. We really, you need to be creative, but this was essentially built for primary care. But like Julie said, it definitely works in specialty care. It's just a little harder to get your audience. And the question is, is it targeting exactly what they need for that elongated education approach?
Right. And actually, in another question here is, do you see a difference between the different kind of HCPs? And I would say yes. One of the things that is a challenge at the beginning is figuring out when you're going to meet. Is it going to be, lunchtime on Tuesdays every other week? Is it going to be 7 a.m? And that, in our experience, what's happened with that is we think about the specialty. So we did one on autism for pediatricians, and we found that 7:30 in the morning was the best time. Now, granted, some of them are on their way to work, dropping their kids off, and on their phones. you sort of get used to that. Another one we did with the neurologist was 5:30 to 6:30 at night. We have not tried lunchtime because we find that people intend to show up, but they don't. Linda, have you done lunchtime?
I have. It's been very successful.
And what specialty was that?
Primary care.
Oh, really? Okay.
Yeah, but this was a regional model where we had agreements with the practices so they could really carve out that time. And in fact, some of the practices even gave them an additional lunch hour so that they could participate in the echo.
Yeah, interesting. Yeah, and that's one of the other issues, I think, just to, while you're on that, how do you decide how much time to allow, how frequently to meet? You touched on that in one of the slides, but how do you, and that goes back to this first question about, sort of how difficult is it? How do you zero in on when you're going to meet?
Yeah. So I think that you really need to look at your content first, right? You're starting your echo with your content. What is it that we need to teach? So if you're teaching about the spectrum of care in type 1 or type 2 diabetes, there's a lot to cover. You're not going to do it in 4 sessions, right? You need a lot more. So you have to think about that and where can you get that funding, which is, of course, complex. If you're doing a very smaller kind of specialty topic where you're reaching the specialist, they already have some idea about what you're talking about, they have some capabilities, but they need to hone in to really, you know, make that gap smaller in their care, less is fine. So it really revolves around what is it that these clinicians need.
Mm.
So your needs assessment, you really want to be quite good to make that decision.
Yeah, thank you. And talk to your colleagues too, can help. Derek, I think you had a question from Tom. There we go. How does this model fit into the clinical day for the, right, that's a great question. How does it, in other words, I think what you're asking, Tom, is how do you, from the clinician's point of view, how do they fit this in? I think that's the question. How does this model fit into the clinical day for the provider, individual, or team? Yeah, Linda, do you want to?
Do you want me to address that?
Yeah, why don't you try?
Okay, sure. So what we typically see, and this is anything that's got elongated education, you really have to have the buy-in, right, from your participant. And that's a crucial piece. So what typically happens is they are willing to participate at the hour that you're seeing them. But that's also why you typically do them either before the beginning of the workday, after the workday, or when they might be taking lunch. And you're not doing it at like 3 p.m. in the afternoon in your time zone, because that's impossible. They've got clinic schedules or they're doing something else. And so it's also why you don't get everybody every time, right? Stuff happens, and so they can't. But there is a feeling of they are drawn into the community of practice and they want to be there. And so they really try to keep that time sacred as best they can, because they want to see their colleagues and they want to talk with their colleagues. So it does end up fitting. It's a dedication of the learner, and you're asking them to dedicate a lot, right? Consistent, please show up every week or please show up every month. But that's why it works.
Yeah, thank you. Okay, let's try the next polling question, Derek, if we could. So again, you can answer more than one of the selections. What types of faculty work best with ECHO? Give it another few seconds. Great. So I think the majority of you, you're spot on. It's B through G, not A and not H. So the bottom line is that the best faculty are often people that are not key opinion leaders. They might be, but usually not. In our experience, when you have a key opinion leader, even as a guest speaker, they tend to want to answer everybody's questions rather than facilitating and engendering a discussion. They're not used to kind of taking a back seat and trying to draw out the learners. So the best faculty and facilitator who are also doing, and so the hub team basically that's doing the facilitating, and it can be your MD, it could be your NP. I've seen a variety of facilitators, but they're people that are really, they really understand adult learning principles, one of which is you must acknowledge the expertise of the learner, the adult learner, and their experience. So they make a very respectful, sort of tone. There's encouragement for everybody to engage. They ask questions of the learners. That's part of the ECHO model, but it really can make a huge difference. And then also they're strong mentors and facilitators. They're comfortable with the technology. Part of our job is the producers of the ECHO is to make sure they're sort of what Derek and Scott have done today, try to make sure that the technology runs smoothly. But it's best if they're used to speaking on Zoom. They're collaborators in real life with their interprofessional multidisciplinary team members, passionate about equity and access to care, and systems thinkers. I don't want to embarrass Linda, but I just want to share with you, that EOE ECHO that Linda was just talking about, Our course director, our expert in EOE, actually, we asked him to be the course director. We weren't sure how it was going to go. And Linda spent a lot of time training him. And this is what he said. He said, I must admit, I was apprehensive about being course director, and facilitating discussion is not in my comfort zone. I'd much rather speak only when spoken to, but your coaching and preparation helped me out tremendously. And I found the experience to be rewarding and a chance to grow. So this is the head of a department at our hospital, right? So I guess what I'm saying is that he approached with a great attitude, which he was willing to learn, and Linda provided the training and mentoring. But it really can be a growing experience. I'll teach, I'll learn, right, for the faculty as well. So let's go to did anybody want to add anything there, Linda or Natalie? No. Okay. Go ahead, Linda.
Sorry, I thought Natalie might say this, but I'll say it. I'm going to put a plug in for those folks who are kind of interconnected in public health, because Natalie and I both have public health degrees. But we see the folks, particularly because a lot of ECHO goes on in under-resourced communities. So when you've got these systems thinkers, they're thinking beyond just the clinical situations of the case, and they're thinking about the full patient, the social determinants of health, the other things that go into making sure the patient gets care. And so if you can find folks who are systems thinkers, a lot of them, if you get people with public health degrees, they tend to be really terrific. They're good facilitators. So keep that in mind when you're hunting for faculty.
Great. Thanks, Linda. So let's answer a question here before we go to the next polling question. So what have been some of your biggest challenges with ECHOs? So I'll start. I would say a couple things. One is always funding. There are certain funders that really understand what ECHO's about and get it, that it can be a very powerful educational model. I think the other challenge is recruiting the right people. You can't just, in my experience, you cannot just send out a flyer and get people to come. You really need to have, especially if you're doing when you're doing the regional model, you really need to have a conversation, ideally with the clinician on the call, with the sites, to explain what the commitment is, what they'll get out of it, sort of how it works. It sounds simple in some ways on paper, but it isn't. There's a lot to it. And then I would say getting people to present cases. We found that people can be shy, and we're actually going to talk about that a little more in a minute, but it's different. People think, oh, I can write up a case, but it's not that. It's actually presenting a challenging case that you're struggling with right now. And we do provide coaching to people and help them before they help prepare how to present the case. But you have to kind of prime the pump a little bit there to get people to do that. Nellie, anything you want to add from your experience with the migraine, or Linda?
Yeah, I think really just can't think of another word beside echo. Echo what you're saying is that the recruitment piece, you really have to give yourself time within the planning to do it. And it could be, a months-long process, and likely will be. And so making sure that you're spending that time to recruit and to really get the people participating who want to be invested in this community of practice and kind of understand the goals of it, even because it's such a time investment, is really important.
Yeah, thanks, Linda.
I would add one other thing, which is an ECHO is not like a more traditional form of education, like creating an enduring material, because once you create it, you're kind of done. With an ECHO, you're constantly doing needs assessment. So as the provider of the ECHO, you need to be really flexible, and you need to put that into your planning in your budget, because you want flexibility to be able to do things that you hadn't dreamt of at the beginning, but you see there's a need for once you're smack dab in the middle of it, because you're getting constant data from your learners about this is the kind of case they're struggling with. This is the kind of questions they're asking. So we often find we have to change track a little bit, or, jag a little to the right, jag a little to the left. And if you are very rigid about it, your ECHO is not going to be nearly as rich or as effective.
Yeah, my first echo, I thought, oh, this is what formative evaluation means, right? Because we kept kind of modifying the curriculum throughout. So yeah, that's great. Okay, let's go to the next polling question. How do you create a community of practice? And again, just you can answer as many, click on as many as you think are correct. I love how this is all over the place. Such a wide variety of answers. Okay, so it's not about showcasing expertise or promoting expert leadership. Remember, it's all about the group, the community feel. So it is about encouraging and rewarding participation, promoting engagement. Again, I can't tell you how important that facilitator is, to not do all the talking, but rather to draw people out. You want to do things like encouraging people to be on camera. There's part of the Echo hour or whatever, the beginning of every Echo is introductions, and we use first names. It's not Dr. White, it's Julie. We really encourage people to feel like they're a part of this group, and everybody has something important to say, and it's not hierarchical. I remember our very first one with MedIQ and Huntington's disease. The physical therapist was one of the most important contributors to our group as opposed to the doctor. So it's really very democratic that way. So anything you can do to promote open communication, celebrate success, provide training, as I mentioned earlier, for the faculty, that makes sure it's clear what the roles are. So I cannot say enough about how the magic of Echo is about that sense of community in the regional model, that in a little bit in the national, that comes to be. And even ones that we did for just 4 months or 5 months, people were sad when it ended. So these are the kinds of things that you can do. I think we have 3 more minutes, so let's do our last polling, or it's actually, this is, we want you to write in what you think here. What are the best practices? And for those of you that have had a lot of experience with Echo, we'd love for you to share. What are your best practices for ensuring you have cases for your Echo sessions? As Linda mentioned, it can be a bit of a struggle sometimes. Oh, yes, that's a good idea. Okay. Right, I would assume with the archive, you've got someone who could give those cases. You've got somebody to go along with presenting those. Nagging, yes. I think as CME providers, that should be our middle name, especially when it comes to getting disclosure information. Oh, there's that Julie White again asking me for my disclosure information in my case. Engage, yes. Any other ideas there? Oh, gift cards. That's interesting. Never heard of that idea. Huh. Any other ideas there? Yeah, so there's a few things we've done. We often have the course director, the hub team, be prepared to do the first case to kind of model, what it is that can be done. Oh, pay for cases. Oh, interesting. Yeah, hopefully that wouldn't be a commercial support issue, but it's very interesting to think about that. We have offered, we've offered site stipends. And so in a way, that's kind of, you're giving a little bit of money to the clinical site. So develop a few cases submitted by faculty or described and provide pre-templated slides. Yes, that is a great thing. The pre-templated slides really helps people organize their their thoughts and when they're doing the presentation, so they're not rambling all over the place. And I think Linda said this, we create a template to gather the case information to start with and then use that to help develop the slides. Review, schedule, and session to encourage participants. Yes, make an announcement at the beginning, let them know it's relaxed. Yeah. I think we've often met with the people that are going to present the cases. That helps too. So Derek's here, so it must be time. Thank you, Derek. Time flew.
Now I appear like a ghost out of nowhere. Do you anything? You have like another minute if you want to finish up with any particular last thoughts.
Yeah, I'll just say a minute, and then Linda and Natalie. I just want to say it's worth it. It's a lot of work to put together an echo, but it is probably one of the most rewarding work that I've done in CE in my 30 years. So I highly encourage you to give it a try. Linda, Natalie, do you want to add anything?
Natalie, you want to go?
Yeah, I really enjoyed the ECHO model and working within it. It's, again, like Julie said, highly rewarding. We've had great feedback, and the program that I worked on, just to see the actual changes in practice and improvements in patient outcomes that were able to be achieved through the quality improvement initiatives was really, really rewarding.
And I would say if you can figure out how to get funding for some really intensive programs from foundations or other places, it is worth it. You see the clinicians go from really silence in some of the first sessions to absolute experts by the end of these longer series. And you just know they're helping people in their communities and the patients are getting what they need, which is what this is all about.
Great. Thank you. And I'm a big fan of ECHO sessions. Both have worked on them and provided funding for them. So great session. A lot of great practical tips. Thank you, all of you, for participating. Go through our ending slides here for this session before we move on. Reminder, scavenger hunt still going on. There's more information on our CME Palooza website, or you can go directly to ACHL's website. Thank you to them for supporting. Look for the CME Palooza logo and give it a click. Final reminder for me anyway, to take our survey if you have a moment. It's on the live page. It's just like 5 or 6 questions. Won't take you very long. That would be helpful for us. And for the next session coming up in 3 minutes at 4 p.m., it is Behind the Scenes, Fellows' Contributions to Independent Medical Education. If you have a few minutes to be able to sit in on the session, it would be great. It is mostly fellows, I think, who are participating. So some new voices, both on CME Palooza and in the CME world in general. So I think they would appreciate having a nice audience for their session. So if you have some time, that would be great. Otherwise, that is it for us. Thank you to Julie, Linda, and Natalie for your session. Thanks to everyone for watching. That is it for me for today. So I will see you at CME Palooza Fall. Thanks, everyone.
Thanks, Derek.
Thank you, Derek, and CME Palooza.